Buying the trinkets. Late one night, Jean-Paul Terrasson is the first to arrive at his secret warehouse in the port of Bordeaux. He discreetly opens the door. The traffickers he invited arrive one at a time. Some of them come by boat, others by carriage, and some others by mule. They go down to the basement, which is lit by lanterns. It's a big rectangular room. Big shelves line the walls. The illegal merchandise is stocked on them. They all sit on bales of straw. The captain says, "My plan is to buy cheap trinkets and go and sell them in Africa. Show me what merchandise you have to sell and tell me their prices." "Sure," Michel Auvergne answers. "Let me take them out of my bag." "Personally," says Marcel Lavoie, "I sell a bunch of glasses at a cheap price. Take a look at them." "As for me," Gerard Lepetit adds, "I have the best merchandise, chunky jewels, and I have almost 200 of them." The traffickers each take their turn to talk about their objects, opening their bags, spreading their trinkets on the long table in front of them, where everybody could see them. They all carry weapons and are all very careful to prevent theft. The captain looks at all of these things. He touches them, examines them, analyses them. Then he asks for the price of the items he's interested in. He tries to bargain, but is not always successful. He chooses the cheapest objects. He buys 50 tinder lighters, 200 batches of glass jewellery, 500 chunky jewels, and a lot of trinkets useful in Africa. After the meeting, they all go back to their places to sleep, being on the lookout for coastguards and policemen. Our traffickers are happy to have earned money. As for Jean-Paul Terrasson, he's happy to have made some good deals. The boarding. The captain. Jean-Paul Terrasson is 46 years old. He's a big and robust man. He has blue and green eyes, long grey hair like a pirate. He is smart and he knows the oceans well. He's the boss. He's the owner of a big sailboat of which he is the captain. He doesn't smile when other people bother him, and he isn't really very nice with his sailors. His ship is called the Jewel of the Oceans. Jean-Paul Terrasson works in triangular trade. In fact, he works in trafficking, illegal trafficking, because slavery has been forbidden in France since 1848. He only states to the authorities that he goes to America and sell poor quality merchandise to make money. The captain is looking for his crew by hiring people in small bars full of weird people who usually stand in dark alleys. "Hello," he says, hitting his fist on the table. "I'm searching for seamen for a trip to Africa, and I want strong men. Are there any among you?" "Me," says one man with a tattoo, while getting up. "What can you do on a ship?" "I can take out the sails and fold them. I know how to climb at the top of the mast." Terrasson hires him right away. In another bar, a few yards away, he asks the same question. Two people stand up to ask what they would have to do. The captain answers them. Cleaning the dock, directing the sails in the direction of the wind, obeying orders, and making money. The two rascals think about it, and shake on it with the captain, who is satisfied with his actions. They drink a beer to celebrate their deal. After that, Jean-Paul Terrasson goes to the other side of town. He walks fast, proudly with his chin up. He walks to a crowded bar and asks his question again. He questions random people by pointing at them with his finger. You, and you, what can you do on a boat?" "We can raise the sails and fold them," answers the leader of a small group of 20 sailors. "We know how to quickly climb the masts, and I, Renan the Seine, can also steer the rudder." "You're hired. Let's shake hands." They seal the deal with drinks of rum. About another 20 men come to meet the captain. They are interested in the money offered by him. They have worked on another sailboat too, and Jean-Paul Terrasson happens to know the captain of this sailboat. They are hired straight away. They also drink big glasses of rum to seal the deal. The captain is glad of his night's work, since his crew is almost completed. He's just missing a cook and a cooper, but he'll look for them later. He goes back to his house with great difficulty, since he's completely drunk. He falls over multiple times, his legs hurt, and he sometimes loses his way in the badly lit streets. A few days later, he's looking for a cook in the hostels of Bordeaux's port. He finds one at Chez le Maire Michel, where the dishonest people are. Then, in the small town of Mérignac, he goes to meet a man specialised in building, fixing and moving barrels of water and wine. He will hire him. The departure. Once the crew is hired and the trinkets are bought, it's time to prepare the ship. The Jewel of the Oceans is a very big and old sailboat. It is a beautiful boat which has sailed many times. The French flag sits atop of the main mast. There are other masts and a lot of sails. The ship can sail really fast. A few days before the departure, the crew gets the sailboat ready. Then they load on board what they will need during the trip. First they load the trinkets, then the food, the live animals, oxen, cows, sheep, chicken for the eggs, and other poultry, and their food, and 20 barrels of flour, bacon, cod, and dried vegetables, beans, peas, and lentils, and ship's biscuits. All of that for the captain and his 40 to 50 odd sailors. Later, for the slaves, they will use beans, rice, oatmeal, and cereal with water. The Traorés. They all come from Senegal, and more precisely from the town of Saint-Louis. Abdullah and his family are living in the neighbourhood port. His mother gleans seeds in the poor fields around the huts. His father is a fisherman. He brings and sells crabs and fish. Born in a family of 6, Abdullah has 3 brothers and 2 sisters. Mariana comes from a miner family. Her father digs and breaks copper and iron ore. Her mother is a forager. She pushes the wagon of ore down the rails. They are a poor family, and so they decide to go to the city to find a better job when Mariana was 10. They settle down in the suburb of Saint-Louis to cultivate fruits and vegetables, sweet potatoes, yams and cassavas, and sell them on to the port's market. That's where Abdullah is now selling his father's fish. The 2 stalls are facing each other. The first day, Abdullah goes to see what Mariana is selling. He looks at the leaves and the roots of manioc and plantain bananas, mangoes and yams. "Hello," he says to his neighbour. "What is that?" he asks, pointing to a fruit. "It's a mango. The inside is orange. You peel it and you eat it in small squares. It's juicy, sweet and tasty. Would you like to taste some?" "Yes, please. Thank you." He feasts on 6 pieces of mango because he's greedy. They would see each other every day at the market. Growing up, they're looking more and more alike. They get closer and become friends. They go into each other's houses and enjoy spending time together. They would walk around the parks, in the forest and on the beach. One day, for Mariana's 17th birthday, Abdullah gives us a necklace that's been made of beautiful seashells. She gives him a kiss to thank him. Abdullah embraces her, and then he gives her a kiss on the mouth, because he really likes her. She lets him do this as they've fallen in love. They watch the sunset and eat a mafe. 4 years later, on the 13th of January, they get married and throw a big party with all of their families. Rockier, their daughter, is born after that. They start working together at the market. One day, in 1865, a dozen Senegalese come to the market with whips, daggers and dogs. They're looking for Negroes to take them and exchange them for merchandise with white people. They kidnap the Traorés and 15 other people. They whip them, tie them together with rope and attach balls to their feet. The undocking of the sailboat. The departure is planned at 4 a.m. on a Thursday in July of 1865. The crew has arrived the day before to prepare everything. Early in the morning, they turn on the lanterns to add light to the sunrise. The wind is good. The sailors hurry to put it to good use and raise all the sails. The captain settles at the rudder, and the jewel of the oceans is proudly leaving the port, sailing on the water. Everything goes well on board and the trip is going smoothly. About a month later, the captain decides to talk to his sailors about the true reason behind his trip. When the wind dies down at the end of the afternoon, he gathers his crew and tells them, "I'm going to Africa, to Senegal, to sell trinkets, as I told you when I hired you in Bordeaux. But I have something important to tell you. I'm not going to sell, but to exchange the trinkets for slaves. About 500 of them, I think. You would have to load them, lock them in the holds, train them, feed them and guard them." A lot of sailors are scared and don't say anything. A group of 10 doesn't agree and says, "We want to go back to France because we want to live in peace. We're against the slave trade since it's forbidden." "I don't care," Terrison says. "If you don't want to obey me, you take a dinghy and go back home. I am the captain and I do what I want. We'll stay on the jewel of the oceans because we don't want to die on the dinghy. But we warn you, we won't take care of the slaves. We will only worry about the navigation. You will obey me, or I will throw you overboard." So the sailors obeyed him. The trip to Africa continues on quietly because the merchandise that is stocked in boxes are well attached. They don't move around much with the waves, as there is no storm, because the crew is alone on board, with Jean-Paul Terrasson, the captain, busy. The captain is busy. He gives orders to the sailors. He takes care of the rudder and fills in the logbook, but he keeps everything about the slaves out of it. The ocean is still calm as before. A few days later, Renan Lessien, who shares the rudder with the captain, goes to find him while he's looking at the sea next to the rail. "For how much are you going to sell the slaves in America?" Renan asks. "I am the captain, and I do as I wish." Yes, you're making the decisions, but afterwards you'll be resting while we all do the work. Load the slaves, frisk them, feed them, guard them and all. If you don't share the money, we'll stop working. You won't have any slaves, and you won't have any money either. So I'll ask you again. How much are you going to sell the slaves in America? Fine, said the captain, unhappy. He took his time to think. I'll agree to give you a percentage. Now, how much will you sell the slaves? René Lessien asked. A few $1,000s each, I hope. How much will you give to my men and I? And keep in mind that I want a bigger share. Let's say $50 for your men and $100 for you, for each slave sold on the spot. That works for me. They shake hands to seal the deal and share a glass of rum. Another few days and they find themselves close to the African coast. The whole crew is pleased, as they have been on board a long time and they will be able to disembark. It'll be in the port of Dakar, buying the slaves. René Lestienne is at the rudder when the ship arrives near the port. Jean-Paul Terrasson guides him, as there is a lot of other boats around. The Jewel of the Oceans is going to dock. The sailboat's crew takes the trinkets out to the dock, while the captain busies himself with food and drinks. Water, wine and rum, and the other sailors load the ship's hold. Jean-Paul Terrasson then takes care of the most serious matter, the buying of the slaves, who come every day on foot, chained by small groups of 15, or a little bit less, or a little bit more, surrounded by armed guards on horses. The captain examines each one of them. He prefers young ones, well-built ones. When he's happy with one, he exchanges trinkets for slaves. He buys every time he can. Under his piercing eyes, he buys Abdullah, Mariana, and their little girl, as if he was buying some animals. Despite all the suffering they've gone through, this family hasn't been separated, as was the case for almost all families they knew. They all leave together. Rokia is frightened. The guards ask her to move forward with all the harshness that belongs to those white men. They are led to the big boat in front of them. All those formalities take time. When the slaves belong to the captain, the sellers take back their balls and chains. The crew whips the negroes to lead them to the ship's hull. Most of them obey because they don't want to be hit. Abdullah is separated from the rest of his family. The men have to go on one side of the boat, and the women and children on the opposite. A couple try to escape by throwing themselves in the water. They drown or are shot by a small pistol. Seeing that violence, a lot of them scream in terror. Mariana tries to reassure a little girl. When the boat is full, the cargo accounts to 500 slaves, lying down and chained on narrow bunk beds. Children aren't chained because they're too afraid to move. Rokia stays close to her mother, not understanding how innocent life as a child could have changed so quickly. The captain decides to go back out to sea. He's prepared the trip, checking the map. He's going to sail up the non-French West Indies in Dominica, to make a stop there to refuel the supplies. Slaves in the bottom of the ship's hold feel the boat move. Their trip to the unknown is starting. They're leaving their country, their land, their families and friends, knowing perfectly well that they will never see them again, and that their freedom is gone.
During a trip in the middle of the ocean on the Tropic of Cancer, big dark clouds are growing. A storm begins, lightning and thick fog. Violent rain with hailstones flood the boat, which sinks a little bit in the sea under the weight of the cargo. One half of the crew scoops water with buckets, and the other half throw merchandise over to reduce the weight and to stop it listing heavily. Marina and Rico can see the water rising, the sound of people crying for help from below. Suddenly the boat goes quiet. The ship slows down. The storm has passed. Cara, falling asleep in her mother's arms, who is chained to the hull of the ship, with 100 more Negroes drowning in the hull of the boat. She looks for her husband, but cannot see him in a sea of dying men. It was with luck the family survived the ordeal. The captain orders the sailors to throw the bodies overboard. Due to the storm, the sails have been shredded and the mast has been broken. Those repairs must be fixed, plus repairs to the hull to allow the jewel of the ocean to continue its trip to demonic. The ship limps into port where they get provisions to carry on the journey. They arrive in America. Sometime later, the boat docks at Maples Beach in the States. Jean-Paul Tarrison is happy to finally arrive in the States, so he prepares the slaves to be sold to the plantation owners in the south of the country. The soil is fertile and the climate is humid, which suits the growing of cotton, tobacco and rice, plus sugarcane. The work is carried out by slaves. Sometimes the plantation would have as many as 50 slaves. Selling slaves. The slave trade was abolished after the American Civil War, and it is illegal to deal in slaves, so selling them in small lots to pro-slavery men had to be done quietly. All the slaves are rounded up like cattle and split into two, men, women and boys on one side, young girls on the other. They will be sold as cooks, maids. Ruko's mother tries to hold on to her daughter, but is dragged away from her by her new master. At this point, they do not know if they will ever see her again. She starts to cry as she is loaded into a truck to take them to the south, to the cotton fields in New Orleans. After several days of travelling and tied together and watched by guards, the family trios look lest their daughter arrives at the plantation and will be their home till they die. They are led to a neighbourhood reserved for the slaves. The hut has a table, a chair and a bed made of straw. The next day they are put to work in the fields. They are told what to do by a family who have been at the plantation since they was children. After several days in the field, removing the cotton from the bushes, the cotton pipes have to be cut down using machetes. One of the boys misses the pipe and cuts into his leg. The cries of pain bring the people to him. He has cut his leg just below the knee, and it is a deep cut. They put cloth on it to stop it from bleeding. That night he dies from his injuries. The run. Alon is so sickened by the loss of a friend who grew up together, he decides to run away. He had two choices: to go to Canada or to hide in the mountains. That night he finds some food and water and escapes to go to Canada. He heads for the forest which borders the plantation. He takes the underground railway that other slaves have told him about, that it goes to Canada. He sleeps by day in the bushes and travels by night. On the fourth day, he emerges from the forest and is seen by the southern soldiers, who capture him. The captain of the soldiers takes a gun and shoots him in the head. They leave the corpse on the ground to make an example of him to others. The end of time. A man called Jean-Louis Marlon, a Frenchman, a campaigner against slavery, has heard about this Captain Tarrison exploits. He goes to see the mayor of the town of Myrtle Beach and tells him about the slavery brought in on the ship, the Jewel of Ocean. The mayor orders the arrest of the captain and the crew, all found guilty of slavery and all condemned to death, but first they give the name of the man who bought the slaves. Marlon and his sailors arrive at the plantation. He could not believe the squalor that these people were living in. He told them they was free to leave, but a lot stayed because they knew nothing different. The people who stayed, including the family Abdal and Marine Tora. Marine gives birth to twins. The boy's name was Mamadou and the girl Dara Tora. They often think of their oldest girl, Ruka, and hope that she is doing well. This was in the early 19th century, and the treatment of blacks was very poor. It is still in some places. In the south, blacks are treated as second-class citizens, even now.